Miller?
Here.
Roberts?
Here.
Wu?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here.
I would request a motion with respect to approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of April 6th, Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any corrections or additions suggested to the minutes?
No.
Hearing none, would all those who approve please vote, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Are there any additions to the agenda? No. Next item is public input, but the mayor would like to make a brief statement before we start with input from the public.
Just some information. I wanted to let the council and the public know that the investigation and review of the incident on April 10th is underway. And we're following the process that was outlined last week. As a first step, I wanted to let folks know that the city council members are going to be meeting this week with police staff in groups of 1 or 2 to get briefed on the entire incident. And then Chief Seraphin and Lieutenant Jason Norton will be attending city council next week to provide information and to start to address the many questions and concerns that were raised from the public and the council members who viewed the video of the incident.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Marlin. And now on public input, do we have, now I guess there are 2 modes of input. Charlie, will you read input that has come in by email?
Okay, yes, there are 20 different items, which kicks in our shortened time frame. And if you like, I can read the shorter ones verbatim and then summarize the longer ones, if that's appropriate.
Anybody object to that procedure? Okay.
No. I think most of them are not long, so let's just see how it goes. I think most folks want to have their statements fully read, Charlie.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't mind listening.
Okay, well, I've got a tall glass of water here.
Okay.
Okay, let me,
Charlie?
there's one that's not related. Let me, then the other 19 are all related to the police incident. So from Bishop King James and Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood, they wanted, for the record, to reflect that they're continually concerned about the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer problem. They're at home tonight in Urbana.
Okay.
Okay, good. Get that one.
Okay, let me, I printed all these out so that I could read them faster. Okay, the first one is from Amy Williams. Dear Urbana City Council, I am writing to speak out against the police violence that occurred on April 10th in Urbana. The officers' response were disproportionate and deeply harmful. Prosecuting the victim is an additional act of violence towards a woman who has already expected physical and mental injuries. Charges should be dropped and the officers involved should be investigated. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The second one is from Chloe Nagel to the Urbana City Council. I'm a member of the Champaign-Urbana community who is disturbed by the police's response to Alea Lewis at 1003 East Colorado. Having read the press release, News Gazette article, and viewed a video recording of the incident, I am concerned about the police's violent use of force in this situation, an amount of force which should have been avoided. There are many questions which deserve to be answered with complete public disclosure and a full investigation. Why did an officer aggressively go after a woman who was upset and standing at a distance rather than employing de-escalation techniques and negotiation? Why, after 2 officers had put her on the ground, did they punch her in the head and knee her in the body? Is it true that after a woman appears to have been threatened by her boyfriend with a gun, that she's then beaten by Urbana police? I believe that the actions taken by the police were not appropriate to protect Lewis nor the community as a whole. The situation was escalated, increasing its potentially dramatic and devastating effects for Lewis. Why did the city leadership allow a press release to go out that says the officer struck her in the head to distract her? Framing this action as a full response or solution is not only wrong, it's dishonest. Protecting the community means protecting all of its members. The actions of our police and justice system should not exacerbate trauma and violence nor generate it in our community. Please drop charges against Lewis, put the officers on administrative leave, and provide a full investigation with public disclosure. The third is from Susan Jones. The responsibility of being a police officer needs to be taken seriously. Please don't leave people who can't handle that responsibility in that position and drop the charges against the women involved to deter further violence. Please keep my confidence in my city. Thank you. Find the next one is from Belden Fields. I find the video of the action of Urbana police officers very disturbing. What caused the first contact officer to bring her down in the first place? She seems to have been protesting the arrest of the man rather than assaulting an officer. So I bring her down. Then the explanation of the punch in the head as a distraction device seems strange. Is that a standard tactic of the department? Punch people to distract them. Distract from what? I do think that more explanation needs to be given the public. I also think that this person has been punished enough by the city. I urge the mayor to ask the state authority to drop the charges against her. The next one is Jeffrey Putney. My name is Jeffrey Putney. I live in Champaign. I am deeply concerned by the city's response to the April 10th incident of police violence that targeted a young black woman in our community. I would like to briefly address three particular issues with regard to this: the city's press release statement, the mayor's video response, and what we can do to support the victim. The press release statement seemed to be a hasty attempt at swaying public opinion before people could see the video for themselves. Others have covered the details of the press release inaccuracies at great length, so I won't repeat them again. But I want to highlight that I felt the statement went to great lengths to portray the woman involved as an unacceptable target of police violence and to convince viewers of the video that the woman was not deserving of our empathy or compassion. This type of messaging is in fact a furtherance of harm against the victim and should never be the type of messaging coming from our city representatives. The mayor's response seemed focused on trusting systems and practices that are already in place to review this incident. But we have seen time and again that the current systems are deeply flawed, and I would ask the mayor to go further in finding ways to acknowledge and address the victim's experience of harm. And sadly, all the reporting so far suggests a larger and more disturbing picture, which is that the victim had been part of a domestic violence incident in which a gun had been fired. This then led to the police arriving, at which point she was assaulted and beaten by the police. I would ask that the mayor and other city officials do whatever is within the power to support the victim and her family right now. The woman involved is still high risk of experiencing further state violence by having to serve prison time. In order to prevent this, the city must drop all charges against this victim of police brutality. On a related note, I would also like to voice my support for Champaign County Bailout Coalition's petition demanding the decarceration of jails during COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 outbreaks continue to impact incarcerated populations throughout the country at alarmingly high rates. Countries throughout the U.S. are decarcerating in response. However, the Champaign County jails continue to hold at-risk individuals on high and unpayable bonds. As further evidenced by the recent victim of police violence requiring community support to be released on bond from reportedly unsafe conditions. Thank you for your time. The next one is from Charlotte Green. My name is Charlotte Green. I am disturbed by the incident on April 10, 2020, in which the Urbana police officers used unnecessary force against Alea Lewis. Miss Lewis seemed to be the victim of a crime, not the perpetrator. According to a report in the News Gazette, Alea Lewis and Cameron Busby were having an argument in Miss Lewis's apartment in which Mr. Busby allegedly fired a gun. The altercation spilled over into the street. A video taken of the incident shows Miss Lewis yelling at the police at a distance, presumably in response to Mr. Busby's arrest and placement in a police car. She's clearly upset but not physically threatening. In the video, her hands are at her side, and there is no indication that she is reaching for a gun or has a gun. Soon afterwards, a police officer approaches her, tackled her, and threw her on the ground. Then two other officers arrived. One of them punched her and kneed her in the back while she struggled face down on the ground. I recognize that Miss Lewis yelling at the police was not a wise choice. However, the reaction by the police was completely out of line. Ms. Lewis was not a threat to the safety of the police or the public. There was no reason to suspect that she had a gun. A police officer trained in de-escalation could have prevented this unfortunate and unnecessary use of force. Why wasn't one called? Why aren't all police officers in Urbana trained to de-escalate situations? Using unnecessary force is traumatic to the individuals involved and to our community, exacerbating negative feelings about the police. It would be well worth the funds spent to train all police officers in de-escalation strategies using psychology instead of force in tense situations. Finally, I urge the mayor and city council to drop charges against L.A. Lewis in light of the fact that Ms. Lewis was a victim, not the perpetrator of the crime, and that police escalated the tense situation by using force against Ms. Lewis. Okay, next is Elizabeth Simpson. Dear committee members, thank you for taking time to read this email and for your service. First, let me say that in recent years, I looked up from my window to see Urbana police carrying an assault rifle, crouch walking through my backyard just under my window. I was terrified. I looked out the window and numerous officers were taking rifles out of the trunk of a police car 2 blocks from a school. The job of police should be community safety. These weapons are not safe. To the point, I am profoundly concerned about recent events in which Urbana police can be clearly seen as attacking a bystander, which was bad enough, but specifically attacking the person who was the target of domestic violence for which police were called. She refers to the video. Worse, the press release from the department entirely downplays the undue use of force by the officers in question, focusing instead on Lewis's behavior, and I ask how might you respond if you were being physically attacked unjustly? And misdirects the reader by suggesting that it is justified that the officers didn't know if she had a gun. Most importantly, the press release fails to mention that the officer is on administrative leave and the incident is under investigation. Therefore, I am asking you to do everything in your power to drop the charges against Lewis, publicly announce the officer is on leave and the incident is under investigation, including asking Mary Schenk to update her misleading article. She refers to the News Gazette article. Advocate that the UPD issue an apology and compensation for grief caused Ms. Lewis. In this time of gun violence crisis, investigate why Urbana police are carrying assault rifles and move towards non-lethal weapons and more towards community practices that focus on decreasing crime, not responding to it with violence. Advocate remediation for the involved officers, including training for use of police force. Thank you for your consideration. Next is Cat 20. This statement is in regards to the recent incident of police violence against a parent domestic violence victim in Urbana. While I was not there to witness the incident myself, I have seen the full and clear video footage of the incident. Several police officers were at the scene, each of whom was armed and multiple of whom had assault rifles. Yet when approached by a lone unarmed woman, rather than using de-escalating techniques to manage the situation, the officer, who initiated contact by laying hands on the woman, threw her to the ground, where she was restrained and punched in the head while 2 more officers piled onto her. The punch is in the video. She is already on the ground with 2 men pinning her. There was no reason for this cadre of armed men to be afraid of one unarmed domestic violence victim. They could have spoken to her. They could have attempted to calm her, to de-escalate the situation, to have compassion for someone in a difficult situation. Instead, this woman was brutalized and arrested after an already traumatic incident. Might does not make right, and in this incident, the officers involved were terribly, terribly wrong. The woman should be released and any charges against her dropped. She has suffered enough at the hands of her abuser and of law enforcement. The police department and officers involved should be thoroughly investigated by a third party who does not work for them. Okay, I've got 10 more to go.
Okay.
The next statement is from Paul Kotheimer of Urbana. In the afternoon of Friday, April 10, on a residential street in the neighborhood less than a mile from my house, a 21-year-old woman was assaulted by 3 armed men. This was disturbing news to me. My spouse and I each have children around that age. Furthermore, the brutal acts of the assailants were captured on video by several neighbors and made public, but those 3 armed assailants are still walking around free and presumably still a danger to our community. Even more disturbingly, these assailants are employees of the city of Urbana. Our tax dollars pay their salary. And despite the abundant video evidence of their violent acts, ganging up, punching, kneeing, and using painful restraint tactics on the victim, the city employees in question have not been fired. As far as I know, these violent men still work for the city and face as yet no penalties whatsoever. And outrageously, the mayor herself appeared in a video press release defending those employees' actions and in tacit defense of felony charges against the victim. The world is upside down here. How can this be? How can it possibly happen to be supposedly good, friendly, well-educated, progressive city where I lived for almost 27 years? And it's unthinkable, except I admit I've left two small details out of this accounting of the events. First, that the city employees in question who brutalized a community member on camera in broad daylight while wielding assault weapons were police officers on duty. Their names and badge numbers, by the way, should be publicly available information, but I don't know of that information being released. And second, the victim, Miss Alea Lewis, is a black woman. Somehow these two details make the situation seem normal, totally routine. Needless to say, it should not be normal. It should not be routine. In a world where justice prevails, the officers involved would be named and shamed publicly, removed from duty immediately, and charged with felony assault and battery. They'd be the ones who spent time in custody last week pending tens of thousands of dollars bond money. In a just world, any and all charges against Ms. Lewis would be dropped immediately. No, I take it back. In a just world, those charges would never have been filed in the first place. In a just world, police departments would not be able to propagate blatant lies about their interactions with citizens in order to cover up the acts of criminal brutality perpetrated by their officers. In a just world, the city of Urbana would not only apologize to Ms. Lewis for its police department's abuse of power and for the personal injury, insult, and emotional distress caused by this young person, but they would also pay thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in reparations for this brutal violation of Ms. Lewis's rights. That's what should happen. Neighbors, fellow citizens, that's what should happen in this situation. I mean, I know it's a long shot. This is America. Racist police brutality with impunity is endemic here. But also this is Urbana, a good hometown full of people who value compassion and justice and who know how to do the right thing, right? So let's do the right thing. Number 10 is from Sharon Irish. I'm not able to Zoom tonight, but I wanted to share a few thoughts on the incident on April 10th on Colorado Street. The Civilian Police Review Board needs to meet before its next scheduled meeting on July 22 to investigate this incident. The CPRB needs to have more power to investigate and respond. Back when it was created in 2011, several of the provisions that would have given it some teeth were eliminated. Number 3, I have watched the video posted by a witness, read the press release, and the account in the News Gazette. I am unsatisfied with the police explanation. It seemed that Ms. Lewis was a victim of domestic violence and then was arrested in the midst of that and now is charged with aggravated battery to a peace officer and resisting arrest. While I certainly don't have a complete picture, criminalizing her actions seems to be heaping harm onto an already bad situation. I believe charges against her should be dropped. Thank you for your consideration. Okay, the next one is from Dottie Vera Weiss. Dear Mayor Marlin, members of the Urbana City Council, I am very concerned about the manner in which the Urbana police arrested Miss Aaliyah Cook on Friday, April 10. I've reviewed the bystander video a number of times, and although I know there are also officer-worn cameras that show the events from different angles that I haven't seen, it is clear to me that Miss Lewis was watching them from a distance and not interfering with police officers' activities at the beginning, and then she apparently said something but was still at a reasonable distance, and an officer turned and headed towards her. Without appearing to say anything to her, what he was doing and that she was going to be arrested, he grabbed her arm and pushed her down onto the ground. Another officer came to assist him and hit Miss Lewis on the side of her head and kneed her in the back. Through this, she was resisting attacks, not initiating attacks. She also resisted being put into a squad car and tried to push away from it with one bare foot and the other foot with what looked like a flimsy slipper, not enough to damage the car. There were a number of times when she could be heard wailing during the video. In all of this, Miss Lewis appeared to be the object of violence rather than the initiator. I did not see any evidence that she interfered with officers' activities or committed any illegal actions, unless resisting their attack was illegal. I believe the officers escalated a situation that should have been diffused. There was no evidence either that she had a gun, given her active hand and arm movements, or that she was a threat in any other way. I am hopeful that there will be a full investigation of the actions of the arresting officers as a learning process to improve safety for everyone in Urbana. As part of this, all the video from the officer-worn and dashboard cameras should be released to the public. Further, encouraging that charges be dropped against Ms. Lewis will allow the investigation to proceed in the most expeditious manner possible. Thank you for your attention and your work to keep Urbana safe. Number 12 is Karen Linder. Dear council members, I was shocked and saddened to see a young girl, likely the victim of domestic violence, brutally hit in the head by an assault weapon, charged and taken to prison. Where were the de-escalation measures? I demand the charges be dropped against her immediately, the officers be put on admin leave, and full investigation with police disclosure. Where is the Citizen Review Board? We need to know citizens will be kept safe from harm and need to have oversight so that will be the case. Thank you for your time. The next one is from Matt Murray. Dear City Council, please include my statement in the meeting this evening. My name is Matt Murray. I live in Urbana, where I've lived since 1992. I saw the video footage of the arrest of Alea Lewis that occurred in Urbana on April 10. I wrote to City Council members, the Mayor, and the Police Review Board expressing my concerns with police behavior during this situation. My concerns focused on the decision of one police officer to leave a defensive position and physically confront Ms. Lewis when it appeared that she was not a threat to officers, and then the behavior of another police officer who could be seen punching Ms. Lewis, kneeing her, and straddling her when she appeared to be handcuffed. Follow-up responses from the Mayor indicated that there were mitigating circumstances and none of the police had been responding to an active shooting situation. I also learned that Ms. Lewis was facing 4 felony charges for her physical resistance toward the police. As a concerned citizen, I am demanding that the Mayor, City Council, and Urbana law enforcement officials seek to have all felonies against Ms. Lewis dismissed unless evidence is produced to show that she used a weapon against the police or initiated physical aggression against the police. Given that she was involved in a domestic violence situation where a firearm was discharged, it seems that her belligerence of being physically subdued and then arrested, though wrong, should be treated as a misdemeanor. I have personally contacted State's Attorney Julia Reese to request the charges be reduced. I hope the city will investigate this case thoroughly and make the facts known publicly as soon as possible. I have known the Urbana police to frequently use de-escalation in encounters with citizens, which is commendable, and it is essential that citizens of Urbana know that the police will behave professionally, even in very tense and threatening situations. Thank you, Matt Murray. Michael Broom. I'd like to make 2 points. First, the behavior by the police in this incident is inexcusable in the sense that I'm sure I couldn't be moved to excuse it even by small revisions in my understanding. I've seen Urbana police deal with difficult situations and they never did anything remotely resembling what I saw in that video. I truly cannot understand what brought this about this time. Second, with all the difficulties and controversies around the issue of racism, police behavior, and civilian behavior, it's amazing to me that no effort is made to educate the public about interacting with the police. It's good if police receive training, but maybe the public needs some too. People need to know what kinds of behaviors can be expected to lead to what kinds of consequences. How are police likely and expected to respond if I insult them, harass them without cessation, spit on them, run away from them after being told to stop, and so on? In the video, I see an uncontrolled police response to persistent but unarmed provocation. That's what I see. But was the response uncontrolled? Or is that what you get when you mouth off and distract officers from their primary focus? I think the public should be educated. It should be in the schools and on public service ads. There should be articles about it. Of course, it should be up for debate too, but there is no point in debating conduct either by the police or by civilians if the rules of conduct are unknown. Thank you all for your kind attention. Michael Broom. The next one is from Jacqueline Hannon, Urbana resident. I am absolutely appalled that a fellow resident who called for help in a domestic violence situation was then brutalized by an Urbana police officer and then charged with felonies for doing nothing more than speaking. We've all seen the video and will continue to make sure more see it. It is not unclear what is done to this Urbana resident is neat in this video. She is thrown to the ground, 3 cops pin her to the ground, and then once secure with 3 officers with guns on top of her, one of the officers punches her in the head and violently knees her in the gut. Why? There is no excuse. This individual was without a weapon, was no threat. There is no excuse, and I do not want to hear from our elected and I do not want to hear any from our elected city leadership tonight. That press release put out by the city was absolutely shameful and an attempt to discredit the victim in this situation. All charges, every one of them, must be dropped against this Urbana citizen who called for help and instead was victimized. These charges must be dropped immediately so her healing from this trauma can begin, and a full investigation into the conduct of the police officers involved must be called without any more wait or excuses. Number 16 is Benjamin Stone. Regarding the arrest of Aaliyah Lewis, straight from the UPD City of Urbana press release, the sergeant reached Lewis, who had stopped, and then he began to attempt to physically restrain her. Attempted? No, you watch that video. A woman who is not under arrest, not being detained, approaches an officer who just grabs her by the damned arm. He puts hands on her before she does a damn thing. He doesn't get to decide when he gets to grab any damn person on the street. Normal human instinct when attacked unprovoked is to strike back. Drop the charges. Benjamin Stone. Next is 17 is Julia Freeman. Dear City Council, I was disturbed to hear about the recent act of police brutality in Urbana on Friday, April 10, as described in the press release titled Aggravated Discharge of a Firearm. In response, I support the following goals. For the city to call for dropping all charges against Aaliyah Lewis, hold an independent investigation of both her battery by Urbana police and her treatment in the jail. The Civilian Review Board needs to be refashioned to be a meaningful board that allows any witness to submit a complaint, has subpoena power, and has disciplinary actions. Sincerely, Julia Freeman. Number 18 is Ming Kuo. Dear Mayor Marlin and City Council members, I am writing in response to the video of April 10 incident involving Urbana police responding to potential domestic violence call. From what I could see and hear, the officer's behavior toward the woman was horrifying and completely unacceptable. The implication in the press release that it would somehow be okay to hit someone in the head to distract them is appalling. And then putting the woman in jail after, from what I could tell, assaulting her is beyond the pale. I understand that policing is difficult, stressful, and dangerous, and I want to support officers in their important work. So if there's some explanation that would somehow make any of these things remotely reasonable, I'd like to hear it. In the absence of such context, however, I have to say it seems to me that those police officers lost their temper, assaulted a woman, and then further abused their authority by arresting and jailing her. And it seems to me the city has condoned this behavior. If I am mistaken, and I hope I am, I hope the police department and the city will issue a statement explaining the situation. In any case, this situation demands thorough and impartial investigation to begin immediately. Thank you for your service, Ming Kuo. 19 is Ron Kester to the Urbana City Council. Along with others in the community, I want to express my shock and disappointment about the way Aaliyah Lewis was victimized by the city of Urbana. Ms. Lewis was in proximity to a great deal of violence on that Friday, April 10. Her life was threatened by an associate. Then she was assaulted by the Urbana police. Then she was taken to the jail. Then she was tased by officers. Then she was given a $20,000 bail amount that represented a sum she wouldn't be able to pay. When you're brought to jail and made to stay there, other problems immediately show up, starting with her personal health and safety, but also including her employment, the status of her housing, the whereabouts of her personal belongings, and her separation from family and friends when she needed them the most. This is part of the trauma that comes from being kept in jail in the county. As you think about this trauma, notice that all the first incident occurred at the hands of the system. To suggest that procedure had been followed from the Urbana Police to the Sheriff's Office to the Sixth Circuit Court to the Urbana City Council in this discussion this evening is to assert that her victimization and punishment is somehow normal, appropriate, and deserved. It isn't. The charges against Ms. Lewis all stem from the violent confrontation initiated by the police. Had different tactics been used, had the officers involved been more conscious of her state of trauma, had there been more patience and restraint on the part of the professionals on the scene, Ms. Lewis would have avoided most of this violence and perhaps even started to move on with her life. Along with others in the community, I'm urging you to formally recommend that charges be dropped against Ms. Lewis and an apology made to her by the City of Urbana. We need to acknowledge that even when the system claims to have followed procedure to the letter, the end result can still be harm done. In this case, a horrible degree of violence and loss. The problem is not that we are noticing this violence and talking about it, but nor is the solution that we are noticing this violence and talking about it. The only solution is to drop the charges against Ms. Lewis and apologize. I urge you all to contact the state's attorney's office right away. Sincerely, Ron Kester. And number 20 is Alan Axelrod. Good evening, Urbana City Council. The police in their public statement said the de-escalation was secondary to their priority of securing the scene. This is unacceptable. Please revisit policy. Sincerely, Alan. And that is all I have in the email.
Okay. Thank you very much, Charlie. That was quite heroic. Is there anybody else of the public who has tuned into the Zoom broadcast who wishes to make have public input?
I see I see one raised hand from Ben.
Okay. So and you control that. Can you call on Ben?
No.
Or do I have to?
He's now live. Ben is now live.
Okay.
I
great.
sure am. So my name is Ben Jocelyn. I live in West Urbana, and I've talked to you many times before. I've suggested that the way that the police act is racist, and now we have proof. We knew that this would not have happened if she wasn't white. She got beat up and put in jail for how she reacted to the police, which is not a meter of how people should be put in jail. No one should have to put their hands on them and see how they respond in order to decide whether or not they go to jail. And then the way that she was treated was actively violent as she was being arrested and as she was treated in jail. I think that we need to also look at this in the case of a global pandemic and the fact that those people were not wearing masks and put her into a situation where we know that around the country, the highest percentage of growing COVID cases are in jails. Our jail should not be open. We should not be allowing that to grow and threaten our entire community. And the fact that we are being so callous with arrests and violence and putting people there in this time is unbelievably unacceptable. To see this video and not see the fault of the police is to condemn the city of Urbana to the continuance of racism. The fact that our police and then police chief and then mayor responded to this event with the report that they did, and then by defending their actions and what has happened so far it condemns us to further racism. It is active racism to say that it is okay to beat people up like that and put them in jail when we know that is not the way that white residents are treated. The response by the police chief and mayor warrant removal. They've both stood behind clear racist, violent police behavior, and that is not what we need in this city. As a response, I believe that we should look towards defunding the police, dropping the charges, pursuing charges to the officers, and paying both for Aaliyah and paying for programs in the future, like ones where women have safe places to go so that public disputes don't happen, where we don't need the police in the level that we do. I don't believe that we need police as it is, but to be clear, this is unacceptable. This is active racism being perpetuated by the city of Urbana, and it cannot stand. Thank you for your time.
And we have
Daniel Jared Lackamaker has his hand up.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Lackamaker. I'm a resident of the city of Urbana. First, I want to echo the sentiments from the majority of those letters that were read, urging the mayor and city council to work toward the dropping of charges against Ms. Lewis. Secondly, to request transparency in the investigation of the officers that were involved in the incident. I want to spend the majority of my time, thirdly, raising and urging action on another matter that was highlighted to me from this incident, which is the use of assault weapons by the Urbana Police Department. I'm a former member of the United States Navy, honorably discharged. I was appalled to see the way in which police were engaging one-on-one in attempting to restrain somebody while also wearing assault weapons. It's unconscionable to me that when other officers were present, the officers who were armed with assault rifles were the ones to engage the person that they were attempting to detain and arrest. At one point in time in the video, one of the officers is sitting on the woman's back with the muzzle of his rifle against the woman's back. There is no reason that exposes the officer to greater risk, that exposes everyone in the public in greater risk, to have an officer with an assault weapon engaging in hand-to-hand, essentially, restraint with a victim. There's no reason for that when other officers are present who are not equipped with weapons that are of that level of danger, both to a potential person being arrested as well as the officers. I urge city council members and the mayor to review the policies, the training policies that these police officers are given, review the guidance that dictates how and when they engage in physical contact with people if they are so armed. And I ask that they change, if there's not guidance against doing that they instill guidance that there is. There's no reason that someone equipped with an assault weapon should be trying to put handcuffs on somebody else so that they no longer have full control of that weapon. That makes the situation so much more dangerous for everyone involved. I mean, to go further, I would encourage that there be more review of even when such officers with assault weapons would even be taking those weapons from their vehicle when there is no other visible weapon on a scene. That's the end of my statement for this time. Thank you.
Okay, Charlie, can we have the next person, please?
Carol Spindell.
Hi, this is Carol Spindell. I'm a resident of Delaware Avenue in Urbana, and I'm speaking for the Champaign County American Civil Liberties Union, our local ACLU chapter. Champaign County ACLU appreciates the City of Urbana's commitment to community-centered policing and to maintaining a well-trained professional police force that is held to the highest standards. That is why we are concerned about the lack of professionalism during the April 10th arrest of Leah Lewis. Urbana officers are professionals who know how to use verbal techniques to de-escalate stressful situations, and yet they failed to do so. Instead, Urbana officers, the trained professionals in this interaction, rushed toward Ms. Lewis to arrest her, triggering a physical altercation. De-escalation is especially critical during the COVID-19 pandemic. Each interaction police officers have with community members carries a risk of infection, both for the officer and the community member. Officers should use every tool at their disposal to avoid taking individuals into custody. We are also concerned by reports that Ms. Lewis was placed in confinement with individuals exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19. The CDC recommends that symptomatic individuals be placed in medical isolation. And finally, we are concerned by reports that a taser was used on Ms. Lewis. Tasers are not safe, they can cause death, and their use has cost cities hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal settlements. We urge the City of Urbana to investigate this matter professionally, transparently, and fairly. In these difficult and stressful times, Urbana needs its police department to live up to the highest standard of professionalism and to regain the trust of the community they serve. Thank you, Champaign County ACLU.
Thank you.
Next up is Rebecca Obuchowski.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Obuchowski, and I am a resident of Urbana, Illinois. I'm deeply concerned about the incident of police violence that was perpetrated by the Urbana police on Ms. Lewis on April 10th. I work in a human services field, and I regularly am interacting with people who are in crisis, under extreme stress, and experiencing difficulty communicating. I'm expected by myself, by my employer, and by my community to approach these interactions in a trauma-informed way, using de-escalation techniques and always without violence. if anybody who was working with, with any sort of population, except for the police, were to approach a situation in the way that these officers did, the entire community would be outraged. And I definitely want to echo the other statements that were made by the statements that were read, and also by the people who spoke this evening. The incident that I witnessed when watching this video was of an unarmed woman who was likely the victim of domestic violence, trying to communicate with officers in the midst of an extremely traumatic and extreme crisis situation. And those officers responded to her with extreme violence. If you were to just watch it, she was clearly trying to speak to somebody, and it would not have been difficult for them to speak to her in a calm way and most likely be able to have gotten to a different outcome of that situation. Instead, what happened was that she was pinned to the ground and had an assault rifle pushed up against her back while she was assaulted by the police. I think that it would be unconscionable for this community to expect anything less than the charges against her to be dropped. She is the victim here. The city needs to be transparent about the investigation of these officers and amend their press release, which characterized her as somebody who was herself perpetuating violence. And quite honestly, the city needs to move to demilitarize our police. There's no reason for our police officers to be carrying assault rifles. If we really want to engage in community policing, that is not how this is done. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Danielle Chenoweth has her hand up.
Hi, this is Jane McClintock. I just wanted to thank everyone for speaking tonight, and to say that I spent several hours with Aaliyah when she got out of jail on Friday, and found her to be a really wonderful, articulate, friendly, kind person. And I'm excited to hear her spoken word art and get to know her better. And I urge the council and the mayor to do everything they can to get the charges dropped immediately, and to apologize, which is well within their power. She's also, I also would like to point out that she's smaller than I am. She's 125 pounds and posed absolutely no threat to those two large men with their giant assault rifles. Thank you all for your words, and thank you, council, for doing the right thing.
Okay.
Okay, I see one more raised hand. DC, not identified. They need to state their name.
Hi, this is Deidre Cobb. I am a member of Black Lives Matter, and I was born and raised here in Urbana, Illinois. Let's see. I also am an Army veteran, and I do want to speak to first, what I saw in the video was horrifying, and what I saw on the news made no sense. Immediately raised my alarms when they reported that officers were attacked, an officer's finger was thumb was broken, but they did not even say what this person was being arrested for. So that immediately sent chills through my whole spirit, my whole being, because I know the history of this country and the history of violence against poor people and Black and brown folks. So all the charges need to be dropped against her. That was absolutely unacceptable behavior on the part of the police. A lot of the police officers, I just want to bring up the demilitarization part. We do need to consider who we're calling professionals, because a lot of people, I know when I came out of the military, one of the largest job opportunities that I had coming out, the most aggressive job opportunities, was to become a police officer or a prison guard, or to work in law enforcement, basically. And there was no check on mental health. And I know I had been going to PTSD therapy post-traumatic stress. And I know that a lot of these officers are either National Guard, former military, have seen all sort of traumatic things, and there's not, it's stigmatized for you to go get help. It's stigmatized for you to go to therapy when you're an officer, as a police officer, or even in the military, to admit that maybe after seeing all these traumatic things and being involved in all these different situations, that maybe it might affect you in a way where you're not going to react properly anymore. So clearly, to me, this guy was the officer that engaged her initially. That was the ego thing. You know, it's like she was upset, running her mouth. You know, a lot of people in a situation where you've already been attacked in an apartment and you're coming outside and then you're having a loved one arrested, even though he was acting crazy. Emotions are heightened, you know, but she was not coming at him in any sort of threatening fashion other than she was upset. And I guess he was annoyed with her. I don't know how you explain it away, but that you can't explain it away. And so all the charges need to be dropped and those officers need to be fired. And the department needs to look at, and not even just the department, this whole community needs to look at, who are we calling professionals to keep us safe when they can't even admit when they have a problem? All right.
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised. Eric?
Okay.
Before
I've had my
Bobby Trist,
one popped up here. First followers just popped up.
Charlie, just to mention, there was Bobby Trist before her video went off. She was raising her hand like she wanted to speak, and I don't know if she knows how to raise her hand. So
okay, let's
try calling her.
Let's do first followers, and then we'll go to Bobby Trist. Or Bobby Trist is live. Go ahead, Bobby Trist.
Yeah, I do know how to. Anyway, my video was turned off by the host, so that wasn't me. I was trying to reactivate it. So I've been a resident of Champaign, Urbana for 42 years, and for the last 2 years, I've been volunteering with the women at the jail, showing movies. There are two of us at a time, but I've never felt threatened by any of the women there, and we get a call button, but we've never had to use it. And if you treat them with respect, they respond accordingly. And I'm very concerned about the militarization of the police force. Our police force should not be at war with the residents of Urbana. We're not at war, so there's no reason for them to have assault rifles and the other things that the cast-offs of America's wars that the police departments around the country have been obtaining. And this incident reminds me so much of what happened with Sandra Bland in Texas, and Laquan McDonald in Chicago. And both of those were Black people. This doesn't generally happen to white people, occasionally, but really not very often. The whole law enforcement apparatus, the mass incarceration apparatus, is very racist. And we're supposed to be in an enlightened community here, and I just see no reason to be treating, excuse me, our citizens this way. And I would like to see all the charges dropped. She was the victim. It's very clear from the video, which is horrifying to watch. And I think these police officers at the very least need to be put on administrative leave. They shouldn't be walking around with their assault rifles, because it looks to me like they don't use them judiciously. And there's no reason that this woman should be charged with a felony for fighting back when she was attacked. Thank you.
Okay, first followers.
Good evening. My name is James Kilgore. I want to speak to the fact that this, for me, is an example of the intersection of racist violence and gender-based violence, and it gives us an example of why many people in this community, particularly Black people, are hesitant to call the police when they have a problem. Because here we have a situation where a young Black woman is involved in an incident of domestic violence, and instead of getting any kind of empathy, she becomes the target of a racist attack. So I think when you look at this, you have to see there's a lot of layers to this, the inappropriateness of the oppressive behavior of the police. So I think, number one, that the charges should definitely be dropped against Ms. Lewis. Number two, there needs to be a thorough investigation of this and look at it through the lens of racial justice and gender justice to see how do we deal with problems like this. How does the police, how does the city, how does the governing bodies of the city respond to this? And I think there's two elements that make this situation particularly inappropriate. The first is the presence of the assault weapon, and the second is the fact that this took place in the midst of a global pandemic where sheltering in place and social distancing orders were supposed to be enacted, and the police completely ignored that and put themselves and Ms. Lewis at risk. So this is a very serious incident that needs to be addressed before we have more like it. Thank you very much for giving me this time to speak, and I appreciate everyone who's gone before me.
Thank you. And I believe that's the public input. And I think okay, so I think we can move to other items on the agenda. And are there staff reports? Okay. Next item on the agenda.
Stephanie is raising her hand. Eric.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes?
Hi, I wanted to give you an update on the business and development report that should be in your tonight.
Excuse me, sure. Go for it.
Sure. I wanted to share some work that's been done, especially in these last few weeks, by the Economic Development Team and Community Development Office. Obviously, with the shelter in place, a lot of our businesses are struggling and in crisis. Our team has been working with community partners, meeting twice a week, learning about the stimulus package that came out and hopefully will be replenished soon. That we have contacted businesses by email, sending out information about these stimulus and loan and grant programs that are available to them, and developed a web page that's on the city website that we are continually updating with information about resources that are available to the businesses. There have been different programs out there, some for hospitality, specific businesses such as hotels, restaurants, bars, other programs for the arts, and then programs in general to help with payroll for businesses and other expenses. So I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about that in the news, and we are staying up to date with that and getting that information out to our businesses. And meeting with these community partners, we're also talking about other issues that the community is facing, including the need for PPE, the face mask, gloves, sanitizer, and looking for ways to supply the community with those as best we can, as those are needed also. Also, as you can see on my report, the city has pulled together a task force to start talking about how we can continue to help and roll out once the state does open back up. So we are working in multiple tiers to see what we can do to get ready for the state and our businesses to open back up. In regards to city events, everything has been closed, as you well know, but the farmers market is moving forward. It will be open on first date May 2nd. Our farmers market manager, Brian and Brandon, have been working closely with the Champaign Urbana Health Department So the market will look a little different this year, but we are going to open to provide fresh produce, fruits and vegetables for the public. So there will be more information about that published, and they're also working with our farmers and vendors at the market. So stay tuned with that. Our arts and culture people are looking for ways to, Rachel is working to have virtual events out there and still keep the public engaged. And they are ready to start planning events for the late summer and fall as they are able and allowed to do that. Some other things that are happening that are actually good news, a lot of our bigger projects that have been in the works for the last several years, construction has begun and is continuing. So 200 Vine, those of you who've maybe driven by or seen, is construction is continuing in that regards. The Gather project, which is on the corner of University and Lincoln, construction is continuing with that. And 1007 University, which is an apartment complex. So that's also continuing, which is all good news. Just one update on a small business development grant. The Nifty Nook did cancel their lease at Enchanted Alley. They're going to, the artists who were involved with that are going to continue to stay there under a new branding called The Loft. But Nifty Nook did return their grant to the community. So, and they are looking at different venues to have their products showcased also at Broadway Food Hall and Brew Lab, which are both closed right now, but will continue when things get more open. On some of the data statistics that we have out there, I especially want to point out on the year-to-date square footage that's been added. Because of those three big projects that were permitted in March, we had over 200,000 square feet that are being added to Urbana, which puts the permits this early in the year at a very high from the previous 5 years. And that high does not even include the project at 1007 University. So we'll see the square footage increase probably around another 90,000 square feet next month. It was permitted in April after this report came out. So in regards to the flash index, they are not even issuing a publishing a flash index number for March because of the COVID pandemic. So those numbers ended at the 105.7 in April. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that coming back in. Sorry, they ended at that number in February. So we'll see if they come back in April. And then home sales were pretty much on target on average for January, February. I've talked to some people at CCAR and Home Builders Association. They think buyers are a little tentative right now, but they do expect home sales to pick back up when things get moving. So we're keeping an eye on that and keeping communication open with our realtor groups. So I'm glad to answer any questions for you if you have any, but that's kind of a general update.
Thank you. I'm going to try and see if I can unmute Mary Alice. Mary Alice, can you talk?
Yeah, I can. Absolutely. Thank you very much for the business update. I'm wondering if you know of any of our local businesses that have been able to successfully secure the Paycheck Protection Act, the money from there. There's been a lot of conversation in terms of what businesses have been successful and not.
I checked with the SBDC this morning, and so far there's not a published list from the Paycheck Protection Program. There is a published list of businesses that received the hospitality, some of the hospitality funds, and there was one in Urbana that received that, and 2 or 3 in Champaign. Those funds were, everyone who applied, they were split a third to Chicago, a third to collar communities, and a third downstate. And then after the people applied, they were drawn by lottery. So it wasn't based on needs. So there was one in Urbana, I know. But we don't know for sure on the Paycheck Protection.
Do we know how many businesses applied, entered into the lottery?
I don't know that number. Brandon, do you happen to know that?
No, the hospitality program was
was the program that had the lottery component, which is separate from the PPE program. And the only recipient of the grant in Urbana was the Rose Bowl Tavern. So.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. I'm wondering, and perhaps this is a question for Diane. There's been a couple of mayors up in the Chicago area who have requested for the governor to allow them to partially open up. And I'm wondering if there's been any conversation at the city level on that.
Internally, we've had conversations on what a transition would look like, but at this point, we're not at the point of making any decisions, and they would be done in coordination with Champaign and our partners in Champaign County as well. So,
do you have any sense from the governor's office in terms of how likely they are to approve certain municipalities? Different plans? Are they going to be involved in approving those plans? Is there some kind of procedure that they're talking about setting up?
We have not had any information yet on that. And we're on, we have twice weekly calls with the governor's office, so we do get updated, but so far no information. And he's expected to make, you know, as the end of the month approaches, he's expected to make a decision on shelter in place and some other policy issues as well. So we're waiting along with everybody else.
Okay, I have Eric, I have a short question, but it's not business related, so I'll let other people who have questions about business ask their questions.
Okay, and I see Jared's hand up.
Thanks. Mary Alice, I just wanted to let you know what I know. I've been participating in the weekly webinars with the SBDC, also in a couple other communication circles with small business owners locally. And as of the last webinar that I participated in this past week, there were no recipients that they were aware of the PPP program. The company I work for has an application out as well. So we're in direct contact with a lender. And obviously the funds are dried up now, so nobody's going to get those. And it's very likely that anyone who had not received it already is not going to receive funds from it until Congress reinstitutes funds into that program. But as of last Wednesday, this past Wednesday, there was not anyone in town who had gotten funds that I'm aware of, or the SBDC was aware of.
Okay.
Brandon, is that a lottery program as well, or is that completely separate since it's...
The PPP program is not a lottery program. As far as we can tell, you really had to have a existing relationship with a lender to even have a chance at applying. There were a lot of revisions to the rules and a lot of effort as banks tried to figure out how to apply, including our local banks. And then my understanding, though, is that some businesses did receive some of that funding locally, but we only know that, I think, through SBDC, and that's only because they have a consulting relationship with those businesses, so we don't really have a means of reporting any more detail, but I'm sure we'll find out more, and hopefully the program is refunded soon. And there was also talk of provisions to support minority and rural businesses, which are less likely to have a relationship with an existing lender.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments I'm not seeing anybody else with their hand up.
Hi, Eric. This is Sheila Dodd. I just want to give a brief update on the Community Development Block Grant CV funds that have been awarded to the City of Urbana in relationship to the small businesses. The City of Champaign, Village of Rantoul, and Urbana are meeting tomorrow to look at unmet needs on a regional approach and kind of focusing on those people who have fallen through the cracks so we can make decisions on how we will allocate those funds or make recommendations to our council on how we will allocate those funds.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for Sheila? Okay, any other staff staff reports? If not, I will move to the next item on the agenda.
Eric?
Yes, excuse me, yeah.
I just had a question that wasn't related to business, if that's all right.
Oh, it's all right with me.
All right, I'm not sure who would have this information, but I'm wondering, I've seen some communities release numbers in terms of the percentage of people who've returned the census forms. I'm wondering if we have an update on that.
Ah,
that's a good question.
I can get that for you. I don't have that with me.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Other items related to questions or staff reports or okay. Next item on the agenda. Ordinance number 2020-03-014, an ordinance approving an amendment to a planned unit development, 1208 Bradley Avenue, plan case 2396, PUD 20. And this is, I guess, from community development.
Yes, this is Lori Pearson. We are simply requesting you continue this item to the next committee of the whole meeting. We need to finalize a few details on that development agreement.
Okay.
Motion to continue holding ordinance number 2020-03-014, an ordinance approving an amendment to a planned unit development, specifically at 1208 Bradley Avenue from plan case number 2396-PUD-20 be held until the next committee of the whole meeting.
Second. Okay. And I believe this can be done by roll call. If Charlie doesn't tell me differently.
Who seconded that, please?
Dennis and Bill.
Therese.
Some of us did. About 5 people.
It was a group. It was a mass group second. Make of that what you will. So all those.
It's a voice vote. Eric, it's a voice vote.
Okay. Well, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Now, next up is resolution number 2020-04-019R. Resolution evidencing the intention of the City of Urbana, Champaign County, Illinois, to transfer volume cap in connection with private activity bond issues, single-family mortgage revenue bonds, and related matters, namely Private Bond Cap Allocation Assist Program, Series 2020. And this, I don't know who's presenting this. Is this also community development, or is this Carol?
Yeah, Sheila Dodd is here and she'll make the presentation.
Terrific. Okay, Sheila, it's all yours.
Hi. This is an annual allocation that the state of Illinois gives each community a set dollar amount that they can direct how they want the bond cap to be seeded. In the past, we have seeded to the Illinois Housing Development Authority as well as to the Assist program to further affordable housing projects for homeownership as well as rental. It's not a cost allocation that goes against our budget. If we do nothing with this, then our seeding opportunity will go to the state of Illinois, and on June 1st, they will allocate our portion. So we've had 2 requests, one from Illinois Housing Development Authority and one from Assist to do affordable housing and mortgage credit certificates.
Okay. Any questions from council or questions or concerns?
So I raised my hand.
I'm seeing, let's see, I saw Jared with his hand up.
Bill Colebrook, Dennis Roberts, and Jared Miller have their hands up.
Okay.
And Therese.
And Therese Hersey.
And Therese Hersey. Wow. Okay, this is really popular. So, Bill, I think, Bill, you're unmuted.
Bill Colebrook?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just one question. It says the city has received 2 requests for the allocation of the private activity bond cap, one from Stern Brothers and for the Illinois Assist MCC program and IHDA. I was just curious, was this advertised, and did the city solicit any other participants or any other takers for this?
No, it was not advertised because it's not part of the city budget or purchasing policies. Typically, because these groups are going to have to use our bond cap authority to sell bonds. So it doesn't have any impact on our budget. And there's a group of investors that typically will reach out to the city when this is announced or released from the governor. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I believe that Dennis had a
yeah.
wanted to be recognized on this. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that my interest in this, in the availability of this of the monies that might be reused for challenged income housing in Urbana or the county. I was curious, and I asked Sheila Dodds earlier today whether it was possible to allocate some that would assist the redevelopment of the Urbana townhome site in the Liberties neighborhood. And I found out that the project that had been initiated there earlier by Brinshaw was not going to take place. They had withdrawn from the project, and there was really no other way to direct the housing authority or anybody else to try to redevelop or reinitiate funding for that project without a developer requesting it themselves. And we don't have one in place right now. So I just want to express my concern that the property that the city owns on that location, which we've been hoping for about 6 years or 7 years, maybe even now, to redevelop for low-income housing that's appropriate to our community, just still remains unfunded. And it's a concern for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other concerns or questions relevant to this? I'm not.
My hand is up.
Charisse has her hand up, Eric.
Okay, go for it, Charisse. The display on my screen doesn't scan everybody, so I apologize.
It's okay. It took forever for me to find and get the little thingy to come up. I guess my question is too regarding the housing authority, the housing development authority part. Sheila, do they also contribute to ownership, or is it just rent? Is it just building developments that people can rent, not necessarily?
Oh, the Illinois Housing Development Authority. They offer down payment programs. They offer tax credits, which is what these would probably be used for. And an example of some of the tax credit projects in Champaign or in Urbana are Highland Green, most recently Crystal View. Those had tax credits dollars into them too, which entices developers to build in Urbana. So the Housing Development Authority offers a lot of different programs, but probably what they will use this allocation for, my guess would be, is for tax credits.
Okay.
Which is rental.
Okay. Another question I have is, and maybe this goes to Lori. Would this be a incentive that the Melrose people will be using?
Yeah, and Sheila can chime in, but that is the thought that if the Melrose development goes for tax credits, that this kind of thing would help fund those. Did I get that right, Sheila?
Yes, that's right. Okay. Yeah, once the transfer of ownership actually goes to the developer, then they have a tax credit application ready to go.
Okay. Okay, I think that's about all I have to ask.
And I think I'm seeing Jared's hand up. Is that correct, Jared?
That's great.
Okay, you're on.
Sheila, I feel like we did this before. Did we do this more than once a year, or is this a once a year thing?
It's a once a year thing. About this time of year we do it.
Okay. time must have just flown by. My other question is, do we have, this is always, I think, something I'm asking about this, and maybe you've sent it to me before and I don't remember, but do we have any way of tracking where this money goes once it's distributed?
We do the mortgage credit certificates. We can get maps on those. I'm not as familiar with the tax credits, although I've seen the larger developments come into Urbana. So I can reach out to my contacts at IDA and find out in past allocations where those funds were used. I know that once we cede our authority, they have 3 years to issue the bonds. And if they don't, then it reverts back to the state. And so I'm guessing because of Crystal View and because of Highland Green that we haven't had that issue recently, but I will reach out to them, Jared, and get back to you.
I just saw those 6 items like we normally do that they can be used for, and I thought, if we're releasing multiple millions of dollars every year out to only a couple of entities, and it can only be used for some specific purposes, even if it was just in the broad scope of seeing, X went to category 1, Y went to category 2, so on and so forth. I think that would be good information for us to have. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm not seeing
Eric. Diane
has her hand up. Okay.
I just received word that we did have an Urbana business who received the PPP grant last week, and that's Bunnies, and it was through First Federal.
Okay. Well, that's a glimmer of hope.
Eric, the appropriate thing would be to move each of these 2 items to council.
Eric,
do you want a motion?
The 2 items, this is 19R and 20R.
Yeah, Mary Alice has her hand up.
Yes, Mary Alice.
I'd just like to make a motion that we move resolution number 2020-04019R, resolution evidencing the intention of the city of Urbana, Champaign County, Illinois, to transfer volume cap in connection with private activity bond issues, single family mortgage revenue bonds, and related matters, with a recommendation to approval to City Council.
I'll second that one.
Okay. Not sure who seconded that. Do you have that, Charlie?
I have Dennis Roberts.
Dennis Roberts, okay. Okay, and to move to council, we only need a voice vote. Is there any further discussion? I don't hear any further discussion. I don't see any frantic hand waving. So would all those in favor please signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Ayes have it. And now, moving right along to our last item.
No. You need a separate motion.
There's one more resolution
for 20R.
Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't do those together. Okay.
So I can do that one.
Okay. I hear Dennis.
Yeah, I'll take that one. All right. I'd like to move resolution number 2020-04-020R. A resolution approving the transfer of volume cap in connection with private activity bond issues and related matters concerning the Illinois Housing Development Authority Series 2020 to City Council for approval.
I second.
Sounded like Charisse. Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And now we move to the last item on the agenda. Ordinance number 2020-04-022, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code Chapter 14, Section 14.7 regarding schedule of fees, subsection A, liquor license. And this comes from finance, but I believe that Mayor Marlin wanted to say something briefly before we consider this.
No.
No?
Nope.
You sent me a note before the meeting. Okay.
Well, finance will present the memo on this.
Okay, very good. And finance, please say your piece.
Elizabeth, you're muted.
Is finance?
Elizabeth Hannon is there. She is.
No, I know I'm muted. Beth Beatty is on, and she's going to present this item.
Okay, and so I have to unmute Beth. If I can find her.
Yeah.
Well.
She's unmuted.
Is she unmuted? Huh.
Looks like it.
She doesn't look like she has audio connected. I'm not seeing a microphone next to her.
All right, well, I'm going to give this one a shot then, since Beth is having technical difficulties. A couple of months ago, you approved the new structure for liquor licenses. And at this point, as we come up on the renewal period where those will be effective, we need to establish the fees that go with the new license categories. So I'm actually having a little mouse problem and I can't see that memo at this minute, but overall the fees would decrease by $80,000. And that was intentional, and it was planned because we wanted to bring them more into line with where our neighboring communities' fees are.
Okay. Are there questions or comments?
I do need to add a couple of things, though, Eric.
Okay.
First of all, after discussing with Kate and staff today, we ask that you're not taking any action on this tonight. This has to be on record for 30 days, but we would ask that you move to send the fee schedule to the committee of the whole on May 19th, rather than what's listed in your memo, which was directly to City Council on May 26th. So we prefer that it goes to committee first. And that'll give us time to answer any questions or concerns that come up between now and then. And we may know, a little bit more about what the future looks like at that point in time.
Okay. And as is often the case when it involves keeping track of money, Mary Alice would like to say something.
I have two questions. I'll start off with hopefully the easier one. So I noticed that the incubator is a proposed fee of $2,000. And if you can refresh my memory, the incubator was that a 6-month license?
Yes, and then it can be renewed for another 6 months. And I will point out that we have an option for any of our liquor licenses that they can be paid in half-year installments. So about of the 80 liquor license holders we have now, 31 of the licensees elect to do payments half-year at a time.
So, if somebody renewed that, would that mean that they would be paying $4,000 for the year? So if they renewed it for...
No, it's an annual fee. It's $2,000.
So would they pay $2,000 for the first 6 months, and then if they extended it beyond 6 months, there would be no fee, or would it be $1,000 for the first 6 months?
Let's see, Elizabeth, do you know how that one was worked out?
I'm sorry, I don't. I'm sure we could, check and get back to you on that, but.
Well, since it's moving to the committee, that's fine. It was just a question that I had, and maybe even the rationale behind the fee. It seems a little bit larger than some of the other. I recognize that like complimentary service and theater, those aren't as frequent, so that makes a bit sense to me. But restaurant allowing BYOB is $1,000. They're not serving alcohol, but they're still allowing it in their premise. So yeah, I just like to know the thought process behind charging $2,000, if the $2,000 is for 1 year, or if it's for 6 months. If somebody only has 6 months, does that mean they only owe $1,000?
Okay.
Okay. My next question is, so these are set, I think we review the fees every year, and oftentimes we don't raise the license fees, but correct me if I'm wrong about that.
Correct. Well, when it comes to liquor license fees, they haven't been raised in 3 years under the old structure. Part of that was in recognition of the discrepancy, in fees between us and our neighboring communities. And when we set the fee structure for this one, and as the memo points out, a number of the liquor license holders will actually see their overall fees decrease. That's true of the bars, Class A, they'll become the Class A liquor license holders. It's true of 24 package liquor stores and that sort of thing.
So if restaurants and bars are not able to open up after May 1st, and perhaps I know that the liquor fees are have to be paid, at least the first installment has to be paid on July 1st. If we decided to alleviate some of that burden because restaurants and bars are not open, would that be something that would be covered under the emergency ordinance that would delay those?
It would be something we could look at, yeah. Like I said, we just don't, we're getting this on file for the 30 days as required, and, you know, there's just a lot of uncertainty at this point.
Sure. I just wanted to make it known that I think it would be something that we should look into, considering that the restaurants and the bars are basically not open except for curbside, so they're really not able to do business as normal right now. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Understood.
Eric, Beth Beatty has managed to overcome her technical difficulties.
Great. So Beth, do you if you've been following this, do you have some stuff to add? And can you hear me? And I can't somehow. Oh wait. I can't find Beth on my list.
She's live.
She's live. And are you unmuted, Beth? Can you talk to us? And do you wish to?
She's trying, but she can't.
I think her audio is still not working.
Okay. All right.
Jared has his hand up.
Yeah, I saw Jared had his hand up. So, Jared, I will.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have 30 days to go through this, and in the midst of everything, I'm sure a lot of folks are going to need time to look at it. I'll echo Mary Alice's point that I was pretty surprised to see $2,000 for the incubator license. It's a pretty hefty price to pay to try out an idea. It's costly. Obviously, we can talk about it later. It's just a comment. I was glad to see our biggest license go down in fees, and even if you added the two packages, most likely to be added to a Class A license with all ages and video gaming, it's still less than what the fee was before. I'm also a little concerned and curious as to see the fees on microbreweries increasing. Looked like the MB1 before was $500, is now $1,500. The MB2 was $51 and is now $3,000. Not that we have, I don't know how many people we have doing MB2. I don't know if 25 o'clock is using that one or not. But I'd like to hear rationale about those as well. Obviously, we don't need it tonight, just a comment. And those are the only ones that really stood out to me. It looks like most of them are reductions or slight increases. But I'm looking forward to getting feedback from our business owners and seeing what they think about these and what we can do. Thanks.
We'll follow up with that.
Okay. Well, I think a motion to carry this forward until.
Oh, I have one other
yes.
information. If I can share this with your constituents, and we'll of course share it with our license owners. If anyone has questions specifically they'd like us to address, they can be sent to the email we set up for liquor. It's liquor@urbanaillinois.us.
Okay.
Okay, Eric, the proper motion would be to put this on file and to send it to committee on May 19th.
I'll make that motion.
Is May 19th a meeting day? Because that would be 30 days, not an even multiple of 7.
It should be May 18th. May 18th, sorry.
May 18th is a Monday, okay.
Eric, I'll make a motion that we put ordinance number 2020-04-022, an ordinance amending the Urbana City Code, Chapter 14, Section 14-7, regarding the schedule of fees of subsection A, liquor licenses for the upcoming fiscal year, be put on file and held to the meeting on May 18th. Committee of the whole.
Second.
And there's a second from Cherise. Is there any further discussion? If not, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. There being no further business, I declare this meeting adjourned. Press your leave meeting button.